So excited. Many of you are here tonight because of this next component. But we want you to hear from not professionals, but someone in your midst from the community. Someone who has suffered, who has gone through hardship, but who has hope. And I want Sonya to go ahead and come up right now. This is Sonya Brown. Sonya, she'll share her story. But she experienced a lot of loss in a short amount of time. She's a joyous person, funny, happy, but she lost that. I've known her for a long time, but really got to know her last year. She was part of our grief share group. And I'm probably giving away stuff, but Sonya now leads her own grief share. And she has joy, she has hope, and I don't know what she's going to say, but I know you're excited to hear it, and I'm excited to hear it. So this is Sonya Brown.
Thank you. I'm going to take a deep breath. I am really honored to be here tonight and be able to share with you. I look out and I know a bunch of you, and I'm so thankful you're here and for your love and support. I'm thankful to Jacob for asking me to do this. It's way out of my comfort zone. I'm not a public speaker, and he mentioned about leading grief share. Like, grief share teaches. I'm a facilitator. There's a big difference. But anyways, I am thankful to be here, and so I just want to share a little bit of my story and how I kind of did lose. I am a joyous person, and I love laughter, I love life, I love people, but all that was kind of sucked away because of life. And if you know me, you know I'm a crier, so just bear with me. If I cry, it's okay, right? Yeah. Okay, so like I said, I'm honored to be here with you tonight, and really God's been showing me a lot lately about just saying yes and then letting Him work out all the rest of the details. So that's what I'm praying for tonight. So just a little bit about me to lead into my story. I was born and raised right down the road in Tullahoma, and I had a brother and sister. My parents divorced shortly before I started kindergarten. And then when I was 6 years old, my dad remarried, and when I was 8, my mom remarried. And I tell everybody that I was so blessed. God couldn't have picked better step-parents for me. And I don't even refer to them as step-parents. When I talk about them, I call them bonus parents, because I was so blessed to have such 2 dads and 2 moms that loved me so deeply. And so that's a little bit about the dynamic of my family. And then I've been married to my husband for 31 years, and we had two sons, and they're both married, and their wives are here, and so I'm thankful for that. They play into my story as well. As I look back, even to tonight, I'm constantly reminded of how much and how often God's like way, way ahead of us, preparing our steps, preparing for each one of you individually to be here tonight, even me. Like, if somebody told me I would be doing this, I would be like, you got that one wrong. But it just seems like every day God reminds me in some way how He's gone before me. And that's been a big thing for me in my journey recovering for grief, which I'll talk about a little bit too. But in September 2015, my stepmom passed away. I said stepmom, bonus mom. She passed away after a long illness with COPD. And for our family, that was our first experience. Like, we had grandparents, cousins, we had family members that we loved dearly that passed away, but that was our first experience with, like, losing a parent. And it was hard. And the dynamic of our family changed. But I'm really thankful for the way our family, my siblings, through the marriages, like I have a brother and sister, and then I had a stepsister and stepbrother, and I have a half-sister and half-brother. And still today, I'm so thankful for how close we are, because we've really needed each other. And so after my bonus mom passed away, traditions and all that, you know, if you've experienced loss, like, it was all different. So we had some adjustments to make, and we just stuck together and we did that. But in late 2019, unexpectedly, on Thanksgiving Day, my bonus dad died. And it rocked our world. And it was just weird seeing my mom turn into this person that I didn't know, because her grief was so bad. So that was on Thanksgiving Day. At the same time, my dad had been battling cancer. And so on December 14th, just a few days later, he passed away. And my family was all together. We were around his bed and watched him die. And then 8 days later, unexpectedly, my mom died. And I had heard of people grieving themselves to death. But when my mom did it, it was like my first real experience with watching somebody literally grieve themselves to death. So after that, I wish I could stand here and say, like, let me back up just a little bit. From the time before I started kindergarten, I was raised up in the church. Before my parents started going, I had role models that are still in my life that would pick me up in their car or the church van and make sure I was in church every Sunday. And when I was 11, I gave my life to the Lord, and I was baptized in Timms Ford Lake. And so all throughout my life, I was raised in church and knew what it was really like to have a relationship with God. And I had watched people go through suffering from losing loved ones or things they were going through. And so, like, I knew all the right things. But when this tragedy hit, I wish I could say, like, I fell back on that. And I leaned into Jesus, but I did exactly the opposite. I was angry and confused, and I didn't understand how a God that loved me so much, I was just like, really? Because I don't get how you could do this, because if I'm being honest, I think it's cruel. I went from being this joyful, vibrant person to feeling like an orphan, feeling like, who am I now? Do I even have a purpose anymore? And I'm just trying to be authentic here, because some of this is hard to say, but I quickly found myself in a place where I wanted to commit suicide because the pain was unbearable. It was a weird spot to be in, because one minute I was lamenting, saying, please God, I need you to help me. And then the next minute I was like, how could you do this? Like, you're not a loving God. It's like I was bashing him one minute and crying out to him the next minute. And that went on for 2 years. And when I talk about God going before us, years prior to that, he had put who I say is the most wonderful physician in my life, because she's not just my physician, she's my dear friend. And she helped to save me, because when those moments where I thought I just can't do this, I texted her and I was like, I need to come and see you right now. And she was like, yes, come. So before I knew it, I just was the shell of a person on all kinds of medication, trying to figure out, what am I going to do? While all this is happening, my oldest son came to me and said, I'm addicted to meth. And I knew there were some things going on, but I had no idea it was that. And again, I went back to God and I was like, you think this death isn't enough? Now you're giving me this? And I watched my daughter-in-law hurt. I worried about my grandkids. And at the same time, my other son and daughter-in-law were years into infertility, being upset every month when they got the no, trying everything, not being able to get pregnant. It was just like the world was crashing in every way possible. And I just kept going back and forth. I thought, you love me, God. God, please help me. 2 years after I went through this, 2 years. And then, I can't remember if it was Jacob or Wendy messaged me and said, we're about to start Grief Share again. And so, in the meantime of this 2 years, I had seen several counselors, and none of them were bad, but it was basically me going in and telling my story, which was so painful to do. And it did help that they listened, but it was just them listening. Like, I didn't get help there on how to heal. And so I made a commitment to go to Grief Share. At that point, I thought, what do I have to lose? And so I showed up my first night, and we were gathered in a circle. And Jacob said, we're going to go around, just say who you are and why you're here. Like, I literally could barely get out, my name is Sonya. 2 years in, and I was still that broken. And when I left there that night, they don't know it, but I got out in the parking lot and I was like, yeah, that's a no for me. I'm not going back. This pain's already too much. I'm not doing that. But before I even drove off, God convicted me. And he was like, yes, you are. You're going to do it. And so I did. I kept the commitment for the 13 weeks. And every single week when I went, a little bit more healing came. And a little bit more healing came. There's just something about sitting in a group with people who are brave enough to share their stories and really understand the level of hurt that you're experiencing. And so, through Grief Share, by the time it was over, like, I can honestly say, I felt real, authentic, true joy again. And for the first time in 2 years, I was like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be good. I'm not just going to make it like, and it wasn't just like God restored my soul and the joy was abundant. It wasn't just joy. It's like abundant joy that I just want to tell everybody about now. I'm made notes and now I want to share a little bit about Grief Share for some of you that don't know what it's about. Really, I just want to share some takeaways from the Grief Share. We meet, we have a discussion, we watch a video that teaches us how to cope and deal with grief, and then we talk about the video, and then we have weekly homework that we do, and we come back the next week and we talk about that. But one of the realizations that I had was I never accepted the fact that my parents were gone and they weren't coming back. And I feel like a lot of times we don't realize it, but we don't. And I say, in one of the Grief Share lessons, it was like, you have to lean into your situation and actually accept it for what it is. And I realized I had never done that until I started going through Grief Share. And so that was one big thing for me, to start taking the steps forward to heal. And Satan likes to keep us stuck. But if we could just, and I see so many people now that I've led 2 sessions of grief share at my church, and I'm in my 4th session right now. But they literally are some of the bravest people that I know. And I see them come in like me, barely able to say my name is. And then by the end of the 13 weeks, they're like, I'll be back for the next session. Or they start to share how God is dealing with them, and I say, praise God for that. But one of the things, too, that I realized was, for whatever reason you're experiencing grief, if you weren't loved deep, you wouldn't experience deep grief. And so now I can look at the love of my parents and be like, I hurt so bad because they loved me so well, and their love was a blessing. And so it's just like a perspective change. Instead of, one of the things I do now is journal any negative thought I have with something positive. And that's a big thing for me too. And then back to something Jacob said earlier, like, this is another a big takeaway for me from Grief Share. I'm probably going over my time limit, and I'm about to wrap it up. But if God sat down right in front of me and he said, go ahead, ask me all your why questions, and I'm going to answer them. And he did. The outcome would still be the same. Because Scripture tells us that before we were even formed, he knew the number of our days. I couldn't make sense of why I lost 3 parents in 24 days. But that was long before. God had that planned long before. It's not like he just did it. And so, realizing that, yeah, he could answer my questions, but the outcome is still the same. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't love me because that's how it played out, or that he's a cruel God. When I started Grief Share, I feel like grief was my identity. It had completely been lost. I didn't feel like I could identify as a good wife, a good mom, a good mother-in-law, a good friend. Like, I was completely lost in my identity. And going through that program helped me realize that I don't have to identify that way. I am a child of God, and he loves me deeply. A few months after finishing Grief Share, our church sent out a survey. We were about to start life groups on Wednesday night, and they said if there's, they had a list of them and said, if there's anything else you think might be good or whatever. And so I turned mine in and I put Grief Share. And immediately my friend Jennifer, who was leading up those life groups, she texted me and she was like, "Do you want to lead that class?" And I'm like, but I didn't even have to think about it because I knew I didn't want to hold in what God had done for me. And so I just was like, yeah, with the God's help, I'm going to do that. And so that's how I came to facilitating the life group. I'm going to wrap it up in this. Somebody said something earlier about trust, and I want to read this one scripture that I like to go to. I pray that from His glorious unlimited resources He will empower you with inner strength through His Spirit. Then Christ will make His home in your hearts as you trust in Him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And may you have the power to understand as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep His love is. May you experience the love of Christ, though it is too great to understand fully. Then you will be made complete with all the fullness of life and power that comes from God. I want my tears so I can see my page. So in closing, I want to encourage you with just a few things. If you are grieving and have never been to Grief Share, I would encourage you to go. Ross was talking about how music saved his life. Well, Grief Share saved mine. God used Grief Share to save mine. And I will always advocate for Grief Share. I call them my tribe. I see a couple years before any of this happened, one of my friends was like, "Hey, I want to start a small group. You want to be a part of it?" Like, those are my people. When all this happened, they were there, and there were many days I wouldn't have made it without them. So I would encourage you, if you're not part of a small group, to join one. If you don't have one to join, start one. We can all do that. Don't be afraid to share. This is frightening for me, but I don't ever want to miss an opportunity now to share what God's done for me and where He's brought me from, because I had never found my place, myself in a place where I didn't want to live and was even questioning God's love for me. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. The bad days, the bad moments, they still come, but they don't define me anymore, and they're just bad moments or bad days. They're not bad months or bad years. And I've truly learned and embraced what it means to lament. And at the beginning of 2023, a lot of us choose a word, and I prayed over that, and this year my word is diligent, and I'm just doing my very best, even on the hard days, to show a steady, earnest, and energetic effort in anything and everything that God has for me. And so that's all I have. I thank you for allowing me this time to speak, and I just want to share one other praise. I shared a little bit about my kids, and not only did God restore my soul from such deep hurt, He restored the marriage. He brought my son out of addiction. He's playing their families back together. My kids have their mom and dad. They're active in the church. I love hearing my kids sing praise and worship music, my grandkids. And then 5.5 years after infertility, I'm going to have my grandson in July. And God is really good. And I thank you for allowing me this time to share.
Yeah.